So I was going to hop on here today and have a chat to you all about the things that you should look out for if you want to buy a house near the coast. And as I was doing up the list, I realised that there's this one really big elephant in the room when it comes to living by the coast in Ireland, and it's local needs planning. And this is something that a lot of you guys don't really understand. There's a lot of misinformation floating around about it as well. I get so many people getting in touch with me going, I can never move to Clare because of local needs. I can never move to Wexford. I can never do this. I can never do that. And to be honest, a lot of it is actually incorrect. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to throw the seaside video out the window, and we are going to talk about local needs once and for all. And I'm going to show you that you can live by the coast if you're not a local to the area. So what is local needs? Well, basically what it is it's a planning restriction, and these are put in place by the planning authorities in different counties. And it basically says that priority is going to be given to people from the area, and that there's a genuine reason why this priority has to be given. Now, a lot of the times when these get put in place, they'll be put in place in areas where maybe there's a really high level of tourism, so people are buying up all of the local houses for holiday homes, or maybe you're in a commuter belt or something and loads of people from the city are coming down and buying up all of the building sites, and the people who are born in the area just don't really have a shot at all at living there, which is kind of like what happened to me in Wexford. I mean, Wexford is firmly in the commuter belt of Dublin, which is madness when you think of how far outside Dublin it is. But when I was buying my place, all of the building sites were being bought up by people from Dublin. They were being bought up for holiday homes, even just for people relocating and changing their whole lives and moving to Wexford. But those of us who weren't from farming families and who didn't actually own land just had to leave. And there was this mass exodus of young people from these counties. So like in a lot of ways, they are put in place for a reason, but it doesn't mean that you can't find a workaround. And they're not saying we don't want anybody from other counties living in our counties. We don't want to welcome people in. There are just other ways of doing it other than just building a new house there. And that's where I want to actually talk about what local needs planning really is. Because to be fair, it only touches on things that involve planning permission. So although you may think that it's saying you can't live in this county because you're not from this county, what it's actually saying is you can't get planning permission in this county. And that's a very, very big difference, because there are lots of ways you can live in a county without getting planning permission. Sure, you can't build a brand new house in a county, but you can move into an existing house. So if you stop looking at greenfield sites, you stop looking at building sites, and you start looking at stuff that's already out there, what can you live in then? Sure, there's absolutely lots of stuff you can live in. Lots of options, lots of old houses, lots of new houses. Really, no reason for you not to be moving to your dream county just because you're not one of the people that qualifies for local needs. So now that we've established that you can actually move to your dream county, and you can even move to an area that has local needs in place, how do you survive through your whole life without actually ever getting planning permission? Is it something you can do, or is it something that you just haven't a hope of? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a couple of things that you need planning permission for. And the main reason I'm doing this is because I want you to scratch these off your list straight away. They're going to shorten down the list of things you can look for in a county, but once you know them, and they'll trigger in your mind every time you see a property, it's going to make your search a hell of a lot easier. Okay, so obviously the biggest thing that needs planning permission when you move to another county is building a house from scratch. So this is one of those things that local needs is going to stop you from doing. So stop looking at empty fields, stop looking at building sites, stop imagining you're going to build this massive big McMansion on the side of a cliff in County Clare, because you're not going to be able to do it. Get the idea of building a brand new house in that county completely out of your mind, and that's going to just make your life so much easier. And actually, while I'm on the subject of building brand new houses, I'm going to put into this section little log cabins and little temporary, as you guys call them, buildings, because a lot of people have this plan that they're going to go and buy a little greenfield site in somewhere like Clare or Kerry, and they're not going to try and build a house because they wouldn't be allowed to do that. They'll just throw a cabin in on it. And I'm just letting you guys know that this is not okay. This is a planning permission thing. It's something where you're going to buy a field and you're going to be very, very disappointed when you realize that the local planning officer sees your little cabin just the same as he sees a house or a bungalow. So again, putting a cabin in on a field in a local needs area is the same as building a house. So get that out of your mind from day one. Okay, the next thing that needs planning that's going to shorten your list down a little bit is a septic tank. And one of the main reasons I'm bringing this up is because there's a lot of renovation work you can do on an old house, especially an old vernacular cottage like the ones I look at the whole time. But a septic tank is one of those things that involves planning permission. And that is one of those things that you are not going to get because you're not local needs. So when you've taken all the greenfield sites out of your list, you then need to go back and you need to scooch all of the houses that don't have septic tanks off of your list as well. Now, it doesn't mean that you're taking everything off your list. Obviously, you still have all the modern houses on your list. And back to maybe the 70s or the 60s, you're going to have septic tanks. So it's not like you're taking everything off, and you still get the chance to remodel. You still get the chance to have an old house and to save an old house. But there are loads of them that have septic tanks. Really, anything that was lived in up until maybe 10 or 20 years ago, they will have put something in order for themselves to live in it because it was just a modern thing that got done. So septic tanks, if it doesn't have a septic tank, you're not going to get planning permission if you're not local needs. So scratch those off your list right now. Okay, so the last thing that you cannot do in a local needs area if you're moving in, and you definitely need to get this off your list straight away, is you can't do these massive remodels of houses that involve you adding a huge amount of square footage to the house, because again, this needs planning permission, and then you're going to trigger this little local needs restriction and you're not going to be able to buy the house. So what do you do? Right. The one thing you don't do is you don't go out to like Kerry or Clare or somewhere and look at a little 3-roomed vernacular cottage and go, oh, well, that's lovely. It's €30,000. I'm going to buy that and I'm going to turn it into a 9-bedroom McMansion for myself. And then you're going to be totally offended when the planning guy goes, well, you can't do that because you're not local needs. What you need to do is you need to buy a house that is as close to the square footage you want when you're buying. And that means then you don't have to build on this huge amount. Now, there are small extensions to the rear of a house that you can put on without planning permission. So like you do have options there. I think it's like 40 square meters in a lot of places. And if you look at like the backs of land league cottages and stuff like that, and even the vernacular ones, you will see the general size of the little extensions that go on that have like maybe a back kitchen and a back bathroom. They're generally the size that's exempted. So you can still build on a little bit without getting planning permission. But these massive remodels of these old houses is something that you are just not going to be able to do. If you want a large house in a place that has local needs, you are going to have to buy a large house. You're going to have to buy a 2-story farmhouse. You're going to have to buy maybe a modern house. And there are loads of modern houses out there. Like, to be fair, if you're planning on remodeling a vernacular cottage into a 6 or 7 bedroom house, you have the money to buy a more modern house or to buy a bigger house. This is not something that should stop you moving to an area if you have a larger family. It absolutely shouldn't. But you just need to know that you can't go in and look at a 3-bedroom house or a 3-roomed house even and go, well, I'm just going to get my architect in and I just want to put a 2nd story on this and I want to put a 2-story extension off to the side. And that doesn't happen. And I think a lot of people come in looking at these houses and thinking that they have to remodel them. They have to make them into this massive show home. And this is what the local needs planners don't want. They want you to move into a house as it is and live in it, or let the people in the area build the new houses. I mean, you have lots of options there. You can buy a new house. You can buy an old house, you can buy a middle-aged house. You have so many options. It's not a matter of just never ever moving to an area because you're not local needs, but you just have to be smart about the houses you pick and about staying away from that planning permission application as long as you humanly possibly can. The last thing I want to mention before I finish up is just a little bit about planning permission in general, because I get a lot of people who get in touch with me and they'll go, oh, I really like this house and it was last lived in maybe the late 90s and I've been refused planning permission to do it up before I move into it. And the thing is that if you move into a house that's rough around the edges and hasn't been lived in a while, but it still has a roof and it still has a kitchen and it still has a septic tank and all this, you don't necessarily always need planning permission for this. And it's one of those ways that people, especially when they're moving into a local needs area, they tend to get themselves on the radar of the planning officers, and it's best to just stay away from that as long as you can. Now, if you are doing something that very obviously needs planning permission, then you need to speak to a planning officer about it. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about moving into a house, renovating it like for like. So taking out the old wooden windows in the front of the house, putting in new wooden double glazed windows so that the house is a little bit warmer, putting a new front door on the house, painting the house, coming inside the house and painting the house and cleaning it up and getting your fitted kitchen in and stuff like that. This stuff is not planning permission stuff. You don't need to get a planning officer in to talk about everything you want to do. Have a look on the county council's websites. They have a little development plan for every county. They have these little PDF leaflets. You can pick them up in the county halls and stuff when you go into them, but nowadays obviously the PDFs are better, and they give you these little outlines of what you need planning permission for, what you don't need planning permission for, and they're really a great place to start. Don't just come in and invite your planning officer around and tell them all the stuff you want to do if the stuff is only very basic, like for like renovations, because this kind of stuff is normally not the kind of stuff that they worry about at all. It's building work. It's fundamentally changing the look of the front of the building, how the streetscape or the road is going to look to your neighbours, if it's going to drastically change. That's the kind of stuff they're worried about. They're not really as concerned about you moving into a house that's been empty for 10 years and freshening it up and living in it as it is. So yeah, little bit about planning permission. I think it definitely is worth your while looking up for the county you're going to as well, because they all differ slightly. All the counties have different priorities based on how developed or underdeveloped they are, and finding out that information for your own county means that the next time someone says to you, oh, you can't live there or you can't do that, you can actually go, well, actually I read up about that myself and that's not true. I know the rules, I know what I'm doing and everything's good, and you don't need to worry about me at all. So I promise I'm going to go back now and do my seaside video that I was planning on doing all along, because I think you all need some tips on that, about how to find somewhere near the seaside and the kind of houses you're going to come up on your radar and stuff. All good stuff, all about the seaside. I will make that next. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up on my videos, because it helps me earn a little bit from them. And that means I get to make more. And until next time,